firefighters, for the new firefighters, and then IT position, another, 100-ish. If you're looking at monthly, Mayor, what I was kind of doing here, we're about $1 million over. Like if you look at our revenues versus expenditures, we're about $1 million over. Just to kind of even things out a little bit. That's the goal. And then if we ever do need to change this back though, because recessions or whatever, we can do it anytime. We can just be like, look, it's not working.
Okay.
So that's the goal. You'll see an email about it. And it's not an absolute have to, but
The rest of them stayed the same.
the rest stay the same, correct?
Okay.
Yes, and some of them have to stay the same because they're required. Like if you look at the roadway one, or those.
What's the safety, what all does that take?
Well, safe, that goes in the general fund.
All right.
So that goes in the general.
We'll call to order the Ravenna City Council Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, November 20th at 6 p.m. First item on the agenda, or 6:04 p.m. But the first item on the agenda is approval of Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of October 23rd. Are there any addition or corrections to those? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve as submitted?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second item, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to skip this one?
Yes, we will have a presentation next month at the committee meetings.
Okay.
Will a representative be here?
Through a Zoom meeting, yes. Yeah, basically the meeting will be the schedule and how we're going to progress with Perspectives. And
Okay.
how we're going to meet with the different organizations and civic organizations.
Okay. Can we just add a note to test that, make sure it works? All right, number 3 on the agenda is an ordinance to accept $1,200 from the Division of EMS for the fire department. We talked about this in committee. Ms. Michael's not here this evening. Is there any questions on this item? I think this is a yearly routine donation, so if there's no questions, then what is the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 4 on the agenda is an ordinance to enter into a contract with Civic Ready for emergency notification. Mr. Content, anything you want to add to this?
No, we have the quote ready in there, in your packet there. The initial term was $6,005. There's a 25% discount on that if you sign before January 1st.
Yeah.
6,000 a year too, and then every year after that it's 3%.
Okay.
Technical fee, as they call it.
My only question, I'm in favor of it, was, I think it was on page 9, the IPAWS authorization. So if you get certification, then FEMA can send out alerts as well. And I think there's just this short training that someone from the city might have to go through.
Yeah, I'd hope that the next safety compliance officer will do that.
Okay.
Possibly.
Is there any questions from council on this?
Speaking of it, who is the person or office that will control the use of it?
Well, from my understanding, I think we're going to have to have a couple people control the use of it.
Okay.
Obviously, I would think dispatch would probably control some use of it just because of the weekends when we're not here. I would think Julie, secretary, would have some control over it with Mike Reynolds for boil alerts, road shutdowns, closures, stuff like that. And then if we go on and we can utilize the system even more through Parks and Rec, probably Judy, putting some stuff on there for alerts.
Is there one person that's going to be the overall in-charge chief of it?
Well, I would hope that the next safety compliance officer would do that.
Okay.
That's what I would expect them to do. That's my understanding.
Any other questions on this? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 5 on the agenda is an ordinance to enter into a contract with Marlboro Township Fire Department. This is also public health and safety. Chief, anything you want to add on this?
No, it was just, nothing's changed since last week.
Any questions on this agreement? All right, hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
And number 6 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Portage County Public Defender. This is Planning Committee, Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, this is just their annual contract with the Public Defender's Office to represent indigent individuals. The contract is the same as last year. The cost is $150 per incident.
Questions on this item? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
And number 7 on the agenda is an ordinance appropriating $30,000 for a donation to Main Street Ravenna. This is also planning, Mr. Karas?
Well, we certainly had talked about a donation to Main Street Ravenna. I'm not sure we've arrived at 30,000 as the figure, but that's what, I guess that's how we're preparing the ordinance.
It seemed like there was a variety of discussion on that.
Was there
the
an,
number itself.
Mayor, I know you weren't here. Brian, the question that I had was if there's a suggestion from the administration on a donation.
Well, I think we need to make a donation. The 30,000 was recommended by Heritage Ohio as part of the breakdown on how they're funded. 1/3 from the city, 1/3 from grants, and 1/3 from fundraising with that. I mean, when we talk with Herb, we recommended that present what they said, but council still has the right to determine how much they want to give. I am recommending it. I think it's, for them, it's a necessary thing. I am not fighting the fight to give equal amounts to the chamber because they have some other revenue sources, but they will need some support down the line. But that's separate from this.
Okay.
I support the 30,000. I don't know where everyone else is.
Well, I think on this, either way, it sounds like council's a little bit split, but, and I think it was mentioned that we'd like it to be unanimous, but moving this forward, we could take a roll call vote if there's no questions, comments on this, and determine at the next meeting. Is there any other comments or questions before? Well, then Chelsea, can I call for a roll?
So we're doing a roll call vote for what? I'm trying to.
Whether to move or.
To move it
Pass it.
forward
Yeah.
For the
Okay.
30,000.
for the 30, okay.
Yep.
Well, technically, I think it could still be amended at the regular meeting.
Yeah, the number can change. And if it's based on 214, if it's in the budget for $25,000 or less, it doesn't necessarily need to come before council. I understand we want it to come before council, but just as a note. So, well, let me ask then, what's the pleasure of the committee with this?
Ordinance.
Ordinance. My mic wasn't on.
Comfortable moving it on? Is there any nays? Well, let's just take a roll call vote. I don't want to, just check the box.
Mr. Kelfi?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
I just have a concern if this is done, if there's going to be plenty of money to go for other employees in the fire department as well.
Can I get a yes or no?
Right now, since I don't know facts and figures, I'll say no.
Ms. Michael's not here. Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
No.
Mr. Harper?
No.
Well, you're the
Yes.
deciding vote.
Yes, we're moving this forward.
I think that's the first time that's ever happened.
Number 8 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a tax abatement with Spring Seal. This is Community and Economic Development. Ms. Wood?
Yes, this is for the TIF, or, I'm sorry, the Enterprise Zone Agreement for the tax abatement on expansion and new build.
Questions, comments on this? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 9 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an RLF administration agreement. Did I read that right?
Yes.
Sponsored by CED, yeah.
This is the Economic Development, Community Development Block Grant Fund. It is housekeeping. This is an agreement with the state and the city for the revolving loan funds for the CDBG Economic Development Fund.
Questions, comments on this item? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
All right. Number 10 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing this extension of the 2021 CHIP agreement to December 31st of 2024, also sponsored by Community and Economic Development.
Yes, this is to extend the owner-occupied home rehab portion of the CHIP program utilizing the home RLF funds that we currently have a balance of. This will just continue to do the owner-occupied rehabs. Currently, there's a waiting list of about 14 homeowners within the city that are looking for assistance with this program. So this would extend the administration agreement for NDS to utilize those funds to continue doing the rehab.
Questions on this item? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 11 on the agenda is an ordinance to renew the contract for Heather Richkowski as HR Director. This is sponsored by Personnel.
This contract is a one-year contract for Mrs. Richkowski. I think it's about the 7th one-year contract that we have, and I'm requesting that we move it forward for renewal.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Hers was set to, her contract rolls over.
Automatically roll over each year, if not notification by April.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's in effect rolling over. There is one change in it, the increase in salary of 5.5%.
It's not a salary.
Compensation of 5.5%.
Questions on this item? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 12 on the agenda is an ordinance to renew the contract for Dennis West as the Economic Development Director, also Personnel, Mr. Calfee.
And Mr. West's contract in the past has been a one-year contract. This would be a 3-year contract, and we're requesting it move on for approval.
And this was, the township stays at $15,000. That was their donation, and then there will be an increase on this as well. Is that
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So the township stay with the 15,000 each year? Okay, I didn't know if there might be a gradual increase on their end. Okay.
Well, for this purposes of this, we're thrilled to get the 3 years.
Yeah.
And the money with it.
I asked last week, and I don't know if anybody looked into it, but do we have to update the MOU with the township? Did anybody look into that, see if there's an expiration date or anything like that?
I did not look into it, but there was some talk about should we revise that and renew it, the MOU.
We can do that.
Well, look at it and see if it needs to be done. It may not. I don't remember. I couldn't find a copy, and I don't remember exactly what it says. So,
We'll check on it and let you know.
all right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance?
Ordinance.
Number 13 is an ordinance to reestablish an additional water plant operator, also Personnel.
Last week, we heard a presentation by the water plant supervisor about the need for an additional water plant operator. This position had been there in the past. We did have 7 water plant operators at one time, cut back to 6, and will remain there for a couple years. And now we're requesting that we move that back up to 7. I think we answered the questions regarding it last week. We had a pretty clear understanding of why we wanted to reestablish this position.
It's also funded out of the water fund.
Out of the water fund.
Not the general
Yeah.
fund.
I'll just say I'm completely in favor of that.
Any other comments, questions? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
All right, number 14 on the agenda is an ordinance to approve the finance director position qualifications.
We've talked a couple times about the responsibility of council now is to establish qualifications for the finance director if we so choose to do that. It's a simple sentence that says they will have the qualifications that may be required by council. In our discussion last week, we talked about what the qualifications should be. We probably had a pretty good consensus that it needed to have a bachelor's degree with a degree in accounting or finance. And the discussion came over whether the experience that they needed to have. There was discussed a minimum of 5 years of experience in governmental accounting at a supervisory or management level. The disadvantage of that was the language talked about only governmental accounting, which I don't know if that's something that we want to restrict it to. Many a good person can come out of the private sector business that has supervisory and management responsibility and has experience. So I don't know if we want to cut that. The other thing is, do we want to say a minimum of 5 years if there's a great person that has 4 years? So given those two, I think the charge by the council was to go back and look at the qualifications some and see if we could come up with some language. This language, I think, may well meet what council has in mind for the finance director position.
So what is the language then?
Right there in front of you.
It's short.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The section that it's in is 23402.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's good to me.
All right. Any other questions, comments? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Was underneath my handout.
Number 15 on the agenda is an ordinance approving the 2024 payroll ordinance update. This is from the finance director, Mr. Huff.
So we just wanted to get to this one a little bit earlier, just to make sure we get it passed on time. The 2024 payroll ordinance, it includes a 2% increase. We did include the IT manager position in this draft. Obviously, if that got voted down, we'd have to take it back out. I did not yet update the number of the water plant operators because we were still discussing that, so that'll need to get changed as well in here. There was some discussions about 260. We had codified ordinance 260. We can look at those, in a separate date. I talked to Heather. She said she'd be willing to come to a council meeting soon to go over like some updates to the 260 section. So this is just for the ordinance itself.
Any questions for Brian on this?
Well, the only thing, we not doing anything about the finance director position as of this point, because I know it's not until March or April that we need to take
April.
action. Because, and I did notice you did have a change in the finance department. If I can get to it. Instead of having two finance specialists, now we have a finance specialist and a senior finance specialist. I wasn't really sure what the difference was, other than the word senior.
Okay, that actually came up like last week that we were having the discussion. I forgot I didn't know she added that in already. But yes, we do have two people in the finance department that work under the assistant. And as one develops, we want to have that position open to give them that title, because there is a little bit of differentiating of what work they do versus what the other one does, so.
Yeah, both say discretionary, which is interesting. The way I read it, senior finance would obviously be a higher
Right.
position.
Yes. The reason they were discretionary, and this goes back, I think, when we had a lot of turnover there in finance, when we had our long-term clerk leave, we ended up changing the department to have 2 people underneath the assistant finance director instead of 1. When we did that, we didn't really know how the roles were gonna go, like as far as, who's gonna pick up what kind of things. We didn't have 2 positions before, so we really kind of wanted to see where that was gonna go so we could update their salaries accordingly while they're doing that. So, as we get a little bit more, I'd like to keep it discretionary maybe for, at least for another year, and then maybe at that point, we can maybe lock them in better. But because the department completely changed the way it was run, we really kind of needed that flexibility at the time, so.
Is there a job description which talks about the differentiated responsibilities between a senior finance specialist and a finance specialist?
I'm doubting that is out there yet, because this really, honestly, I didn't even know she put that in there, because we were just talking about this last week, so I apologize, I didn't even see that she changed that until just now. So I'll talk to Heather to see if we have that description for the new one yet. I don't think so, because I haven't talked to her about it, so I doubt it. So I will try to get that to you as soon as I can. If that, if it's too much of a problem to change that, if that's gonna be something that's gonna hold things up, we can just have it like it was before, the wording, and just keep it,
Well-
leave it alone.
There's no placeholder in here for the finance director. There is a section on elected,
Yes.
but it doesn't, it just mentions the finance director, sort of, and doesn't provide any other information, and it's not appropriate that it would be put in, unless you're talking about your position right now
Yeah.
until, so I guess the question is, are we gonna update this again in April?
You would definitely need to
Okay.
update this again.
If that's the plan, then that's fine. Maybe we could update the other finance position as well at that time as,
Yeah.
So the only other question I had, though, is towards the end, there was these added sections
Okay.
on, what was it?
Bonds?
Yeah, bonds.
Yes.
And what was the other one? Job descriptions, which I didn't understand. Maybe you could explain why that's in there. It's not job descriptions, it's just this, and I see there's a little reference to, chapter 260 in there.
Right.
But what is the purpose of that section? Just to say that there will be job descriptions?
Well, I did a pretty good review of 260 and looking at it, and I made some recommendations to Heather, how I wanted to put, kind of comparing the payroll ordinance to 260. Those were 2 sections that were completely absent from
The payroll.
payroll ordinance. And if we're gonna try to use this as the main guide,
Okay.
and then then we'll also have the internal management procedures and policies.
Right.
So using that in conjunction with this, that should be able to replace 260. I didn't want to completely take those out, so that's why we did kind of revise these a little bit from 260 and put them in here, so they weren't completely absent. They don't have to stay in there like this. This is kind of a draft, so.
That's fine, I don't have any objection to it, just, they came out of nowhere, they weren't in our last.
Yeah, those were added in.
Okay, no, that's okay, I'm good.
Any other questions on this then? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
And number 16 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Medical Mutual for 2024, also finance director.
Okay, so this one was actually some really good news. We're going through the renewal. We've had several meetings with our insurance brokers on this. The increase to the health plan was very, very low. It actually ended up at 0.6%, which is almost unheard of. We were really happy. Claims have been really good, knock on wood here. And so the cost really was very favorable for this. And this will benefit the employees and the city alike. So, because the employees pay a percentage of the cost, so their costs will increase by the 0.6, as will the cities. A couple things we did add this year was a wellness program. We were really happy to add that in. It got pretty good participation. We hope next year, as word of mouth goes on, we're going to get even more, but it was pretty good for a first-year program on that. And we also had several meetings, and we have a health and wellness committee. And there was really a lot of push with that committee to look at our dental and vision coverage. The amounts were not being covered very well. And the dental coverage that we've had, it was through the AFSCME. It was not covering a lot of dentists. The people were getting there and they're getting dropped more and more and more. So we had a lot of complaints about it. So we were looking at a different program, and Heather was able to find one along with our brokers there. And it was not a significant amount more, so it was very much a win-win situation there. So that's about it for the,
That sounds excellent.
yeah. A lot of work was put into this. Heather's done a really good job with kind of spearheading this.
Have we had vision in the past?
We have had vision in the past, yes.
Yes.
Delta is the new company that they're looking at. That
For the
provide-
dental.
For the dental.
For the
Yeah.
downtown?
Delta Dental, yes.
Yeah.
They're very common for
Yeah,
a lot of
Yeah.
places, yeah. They're kind of the premier.
yeah.
So the wellness program, if I recall, there was built-in incentives that
correct.
and I think the first year was just like a fixed amount, maybe like $300 or something.
So
And then in future years, it actually cuts into the percentage you pay?
you're right, yeah. So the first year, they were given, if they met all the criteria, went through all the screenings and everything they're supposed to do, they would get a premium holiday, and that would affect both of their December payrolls. So
Oh.
they would not pay any premium to those.
Oh, that's.
And then and what you're talking about too also is correct. We would decrease the amount they pay 2%. When I say 2%, I'm saying if they pay 13%, as in the contract, they would pay 11%.
Right.
And then it's less if they're on the lesser plan, so
Yeah.
they get a decent discount for that.
So do you have any numbers about how many people participated? 'Cause it's not critical, but it's helpful to know, like, how many employees are taking, and it's interesting that, that our cost for health insurance isn't going up that much, which is great, because other places, it's going up in double digits.
Yes, we were very fortunate
And
there.
the goal of a wellness program is to help stem that tide. So I'm just curious if a lot of people already took, if that might be helping us. It's how it helps everybody in the long run if they participate. And the incentivizing is a great idea.
Yeah, the purpose really, the biggest thing is to prevent, well, it's good for the employees because it could prevent a catastrophe, but also it can prevent some pretty large costs for the city. Like if someone goes into a cardiac arrest, they had a high blood pressure they weren't aware of, and they don't routinely go to the doctor. That was the whole purpose of doing this.
Okay.
25 to 30 people took
Yeah,
advantage of it.
that sounds about right, yeah.
That's good.
I think they're closer to 30 is what I remember at the end. Yep.
That's great.
And that was doing the 3 bits of criteria, the online, the physical, and then of age health screen.
Yeah.
Which could be colonoscopy or something like that. Some might have done just the physical and not completed the other items.
All right, any other questions on this? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 17 on the agenda is an ordinance approving the 2024 temporary budget. This is also the finance director.
This one's more of a housekeeping item. Council already approved the starting budget for 2024 in the summer. The total appropriations are at $30,558,236,000. I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. $30,558,236. So there's no change in what council approved from that original budget. We'll be looking at revised budgets February and March
Okay.
of next year.
Any questions on the budget analysis? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
And the final agenda on the item tonight, final agenda item tonight is ordinance accepting the distribution of income taxes collected in 2024.
Okay. So this one is a housekeeping item. However, I did send you, everybody a pretty long email on Friday, I believe, with a proposal. This is not something it's not certainly up for discussion, but given the fact that our general fund's doing very well, which I'm glad to see, it's helping our bond ratings, it's very good. This revision to the ordinance is kind of a response to that, to try to get some more money into our capital fund, to serve our capital needs, but also to set aside some money for some of the design and architecture if we're going to go ahead with the city hall. This would give another about $450,000 annually to our capital fund, and it would take that money away from the general fund. Like I said in the email, we're about $1 million up as far as revenues versus expenditures this year. That's after the end of October. I don't see anything that would really change that too much going into the end of the year. But so if we're looking at about $1 million, we got possibly some firefighters that we are looking at maybe adding in the future. That's $330,000-ish, extra cost. Possibly an IT director, that's another $100,000 hit to the general fund, and then adding this in, it gets us pretty close to break even, which I think is a good place to be for the general fund with the balances that we have now. The good thing is with this, if we start going into this, we hit a recession, taxes, fall, we get some major expenditures, we can change this at any time. We don't have to wait till the end of the year. So we can get in there and be like, oh my gosh, this is not working, or we get hit with some major catastrophe or something, we can change this. So it's just a thought that I had. Everything else stayed the same on this distribution. I shared with you the 23 and the 24 kind of comparison side to side. So, I guess looking for thoughts if, people want to kind of go that way, or we could just leave it alone and do the same thing we did last year.
It's not that much of a difference.
No.
It's going from 45% in the general fund to 43, and about 8.5% to 12% in the capital improvement. Everything else is the same.
Everything else is the same.
I've never really understood this table. I mean, I understand it. I don't
Yeah.
understand why there's two columns. I mean, really, you could just put the second column is just the percentage of the money.
Yeah, I mean, the 2.5 is breaking down what the
I know.
income tax rate is. Yeah, it's just two ways of showing the same thing.
I think normally what we'd see in that second column is 42% instead of 0.42.
Yeah.
But then it looks like, then it gets confusing because you have percentages in the first column. So I get why
Yeah,
it's done, and I think it's been, and you probably inherited this, so.
We did. We did tweak it in 21, I believe, 2021. We gave a little bit more to the parks levy one at that time, because it was 0.10%, now it's 0.12%, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's really made a big difference with that parks fund. It's doing very well now.
Well, yeah, and the safety and the
And then-
street, well, not street, roadway,
Yeah.
we have to keep.
Yes,
that.
those have to stay, right. There's a lot of these that have to stay.
Right.
The 0.05% in the park CI that has to stay.
Yeah.
The water revenue, the 0.25, I believe that has to stay. The roadway you're correct, the safety one, that has to stay.
Yeah, I'm fine with the redistribution and it's just tweaking, which is fine. I'm okay with that.
Any other comments, questions?
No, I'm fine with it also, Brian. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep, and I agree. If there's no other questions, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
And that is everything on the agenda. We have a motion to, go ahead.
I do have some new business that was brought to my attention today before council. Jason Lovejoy, our street superintendent, they've had one of our dump trucks at a local dealer trying to be fixed for over a month. The dealer has not been able to diagnose the problem. So they've chosen to bring the truck back. That being said, they were looking at purchasing a couple new dump trucks next year. He's wondering, he still has $63,000 budgeted this year in that line. and I guess it's, why it's kind of urgent at this point is those trucks, as we know, are very hard to find. The big plow truck that was ordered just about a year ago still hasn't come in, so should be soon, hopefully. But in searching, he found a 550, which is comparable to the one that's down right now. The cost of that vehicle as is $73,000. He will need to outfit it with a plow and some other items that he'll require to do all the work in the city. But that being said, he's short $10,000 to being able to purchase. He said he sent a tracking sheet late today. I don't know, I don't believe anybody's actually seen it yet. But just wanted to know if this is something everybody felt comfortable with at this point. We'll probably have to do a special on it because he's very fearful that this truck will disappear before he can.
Well, we have a special next week, right? So if everybody's comfortable, we can read an ordinance tonight and then get whatever the numbers are in the contract or whatever, as long as, Brian, I'm kind of looking at you too, if the budget makes sense.
Yeah.
Where's the additional money coming from, the
$10,000.
additional $10,000?
It's gonna be out of the capital fund.
Oh, just,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
the 553 fund, yeah.
okay.
At this point,
So,
We comfortable with that?
yeah, he was talking about the 10,000 like Matt was saying when I talked to him, but I haven't got the exact numbers from him yet, so I haven't seen it.
If it's needed, it's needed. I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
very much so needed at this point. It's also a vehicle that they'll plow when we use to plow when we have lighter snows as well, so.
I was going to ask you, pertaining to that, I know there's a special truck dealer right off of 680. Meridian Road is the exit. I was wondering if he had contacted that dealer. All they do is sell trucks and that's it.
I don't know if that's the dealer that he's found one at or not, but he
Well,
did
what I'm
say he
referring to
found
is,
one.
is the one that's been down, and you said a local dealer is unable to fix it.
Oh, for the repairs?
Yes.
Yeah, that I'm not sure.
Are we still going to repair and keep the other truck?
They're
Is it worth
looking
it?
at it in-house at
Yeah.
this point, and they're still gonna try and figure it out. But it also, outside of engine troubles right now, there's some additional
Okay.
Okay.
issues as well that they're trying to address, but this is
Yeah.
a big need for them.
If you're comfortable, then we'll change the wording when it comes time next week, but an ordinance to approve the purchase of a street department vehicle. Is that Chelsea?
And
Okay.
you said it's a 550.
I believe it's a 550 dump truck.
Leave it general for now. We'll get the,
General.
And add appropriations for some amount.
okay.
Yeah.
So 2 ordinances. If we're comfortable with that, no questions. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Thank you.
Anything else? If there's nothing else on the agenda, then do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.
Good job, man. You had it on the fly.
Yeah, you did a nice job with that.